This story happened years ago to students and faculty members of the University of Santo Tomas. Many of them claim to have experienced strange and scary things within the university walls. One student, Rani, was walking alone on the Espana walkway at night when he heard a strange sound behind him. He turned around, but there was no one there. Rani was frightened and ran to the gate as fast as he could. As it turns out, Rani's experience was not an isolated incident. Many others have reported seeing ghosts and experiencing paranormal activities within the university. History professor Jose Victor Torres claims to have seen the ghost of a dead priest walking in the Benavides Park at midnight. Other students and faculty members have also shared their own scary encounters, including seeing ghosts in the classrooms, corridors, and even the comfort rooms. What's strange is that the university's history may be the reason for these ghost sightings. Thousands of people have died within the university's walls over the years. Despite these stories, Torres warns against believing them too much. He says that sometimes people create their own ghost stories, and it's hard to know what's real and what's not. This story happened years ago at Adamson University. A student was waiting for her class to start, so she went to the girls' bathroom on the 3rd floor of the Ojanam building. She wanted to fix her hair, so she went in front of the mirror. But then, she saw something that made her blood run cold. There was a girl in the nursing uniform standing next to her, but when she looked closer, she realized that the girl had no face. The student was shocked and scared. She didn't see the girl enter the bathroom, and she didn't hear any noise. She was alone in the bathroom, or so she thought. She waited for a few minutes, hoping that the girl would disappear, and then she slowly turned around to look again, and thankfully the girl was gone. The student rushed out of the bathroom and found her friend waiting for her outside. She asked her friend if she had seen anyone else enter the bathroom, but her friend said no. The student was confused and scared. She didn't know what to think. Did she really see a girl with no face, or was it just her imagination? She never found out, but she never forgot the experience. This story happened 7 months after the tragic ozone disco fire that killed 162 people before midnight of March 18, 1996. A group of cameramen were sent to the burned-out building. It was to capture evidence of the rumored ghostly apparitions and crying voices that people claimed to have seen and heard. When they arrived, they noticed some bystanders following them. The main cameraman told his assistant to ask the bystanders to leave. However, when the cameraman returned after dinner to continue filming, they again noticed the bystanders standing behind them. But this time, when they tried to shoo them away, one of the bystanders spoke up in a gentle voice, saying, "We can't get out. We can't open the door. Help." The cameraman and his assistant were nervous, but they tried to capture the moment by turning around the camera. But when they checked on the screen, no one was there. It's when they realized that all the time they were shooting, they were the only humans present inside the ozone. This story happened on June 13, 2009, to a group of friends who went on a trip to Corregidor Island. They were excited to explore the island and learn about its history, but little did they know, their trip would take a strange and scary turn. As they walked through the Malinta Tunnel at night, they started to hear strange noises. It sounded like someone was breathing heavily, but they couldn't see anyone. Some of them even saw things that couldn't be explained. A headless soldier, and then a group of soldiers marching down a staircase. The group was getting more and more scared by the minute, but the scariest part of the trip was yet to come. As they stood in the darkness, they felt a strange feeling. It was like the temperature around them was changing. Hot one minute, cold the next. One of them even fainted, and when they tried to help her, they felt like something was stopping them. The next morning, the group was still nervous because of what had happened the night before. But when they looked back at the area where they had seen the ghostly apparitions, they were shocked to find that there was nothing there. No staircase, no buildings, just an empty hill. It was as if the whole thing had been a dream, but the group knew what they had seen, and they knew that it was real. This story happened years ago when a man named James and his friends named Alan, Lyndon, and Sebastian visited the Manila Film Center, which was ordered to be built by Imelda Marcos. The building has a dark history, with a tragic accident that killed 169 workers during its construction on November 17, 1981. The group decided to explore the theater and conduct a ghost hunting activity. They met a security guard who warned them about the paranormal activities in the building. The guard shared that he often heard voices, but they were just chattering and not specific. As they explored the theater, they found a creepy room with writings on the wall that seemed to blame Imelda Marcos for the tragic accident. James tried to listen to the voices by putting his ear on the wall and heard a faint cry for help. He also saw a bloody man standing beside the door, but his friends didn't see anything. James couldn't resist his fear anymore, so he and Lyndon decided to leave, but Alan and Sebastian stayed behind. Later, Sebastian rushed out of the building, carrying Alan, who was bleeding from the mouth. They rushed Alan to the hospital, where he is still admitted to this day. Sebastian then shared that after Lyndon and James left, Alan suddenly collapsed, woke up with red eyes, and screamed, "You will all pay," before collapsing again. Sebastian then carried Alan out of the building. From that day on, they never went to visit the Manila Film Center ever again. This story happened years ago at Casa Manila, a historic house museum located in Intramuros, Manila, built in the 19th century. During World War II, Casa Manila suffered significant damage and many lives were lost in the area. In fact, a well on the site was later found to contain the remains of many people who died during the war. They think that these people might have been trapped or killed in the well, and their bodies were just left there. Because of this, many people believe that Casa Manila is haunted. They say that the spirits of the people who died there are still roaming around the place till this day. Some people even reported hearing strange noises like footsteps and clapping even when no one was around. The guards and workers at Casa Manila have also experienced strange things. They would hear noises at night and sometimes they would see shadows moving around. Some workers even refused to work alone because they were too scared. One time, the janitors were cleaning the museum and they heard clapping sounds coming from an empty room. They thought it was strange but also kind of nice, like the spirits were happy that the place was being cleaned. All these strange occurrences make people believe that Casa Manila is truly haunted. But even with all the scary stories, the place still attracts many visitors. Maybe they're curious about the ghosts, or maybe they just want to learn more about the history of the place. Whatever the reason may be, Casa Manila remains a fascinating and spooky place to visit. This story happened years ago to an employee at Casa Manila, a museum with a lot of history. She was resting in the museum shop when someone suddenly grabbed her thigh. When she opened her eyes, she saw a ghostly figure of a man with a long beard and old-fashioned clothes. He was angry with her for putting her feet on an antique table. The employee was so scared that she screamed and ran away. The same employee who saw the ghostly man had another strange encounter. She met a woman who seemed friendly and knowledgeable about the museum's furniture and history. The woman even described the table that was used during a wedding and the music that was played. But what really caught the employee's attention was when the woman said, "I used to live here." The employee was confused because she knew that the museum was not a place where people lived. And that's when she realized the woman was a ghost. The employee was so scared that she started trembling and lit a cigarette to calm herself. After a few seconds, the lady disappeared. No one knows why the ghosts are still in Casa Manila. Could it be that the reconstruction was done so well that they feel at home and have decided to stay? This story happened years ago to Aja, a former employee of the Department of Labor and Employment in Intramuros, Manila. Aja worked at night from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. with two other colleagues. They would often hear strange noises and feel scared, but they tried to ignore it. One night, Aja was watching TV when he heard footsteps behind him. He turned around, but no one was there. The lights flickered and went out, and when they came back on, Aja saw something that made his blood run cold. A ghostly figure was standing next to him. The figure was a man with no eyes, wearing a black shirt and blue pants. Aja was so scared that he couldn't move or speak. He was frozen in fear for 2 minutes before he ran to his supervisor's room, crying and shaking. His supervisor and colleagues were shocked to see him like that. They prayed and tried to calm him down. Later, they found out that the ghost was a former employee who had died. He was a writer who had a bad habit of drinking too much. Even though he was a good writer, his drinking problem caused him a lot of trouble. In the end, it was his drinking that led to his death. Aja was shaken by his experience, and it took him a while to get over it. He was sick for a week and was always nervous when he went back to work. He even started wearing a rosary to protect himself from the ghost. This story happened around 2013 at Adamson University's SV building. It was a usual evening class, and one of the students was sitting in the back of the room. As she waited for the class to end, she looked at the door's glass window and saw something strange. A girl was standing outside, staring at her. She couldn't see her face clearly, but she knew someone was there. She thought that maybe she needed something from the professor, so she announced it to the class. But when the professor opened the door, there was no one there. The student was scolded and laughed at by her classmates. They thought that she was just imagining things, but the student knew what she saw. When the class ended, she went to the restroom to calm down, but what happened next just made her even more scared. As she was washing her hands, she heard someone crying in the next cubicle. She tried to comfort the person, but there was no response. She started to feel uneasy and quickly left the restroom. When she got out, she saw that the middle room was closed, but she didn't think much of it. She thought that maybe the students from that room had already left. But when she told the guard that there was still students upstairs, the guard said he had just finished his rounds and saw no one else. The student was confused and scared. She realized that she might have been alone in the building the whole time. She quickly left the building, wondering if she had really seen the girl and heard her crying, or if it was all just her imagination. This story happened to a man who moved to Tacloban City for his first facility assignment as an air traffic controller. The date was March 2, 2014, a few months after the big typhoon Yolanda hit the area, where thousands of people lost their lives. He started working at the airport and lived in a room at the control tower. One night, he saw a dark figure standing in his room, but he thought it was just his imagination. As time passed, he experienced more strange things. He would smell a strong scent of orchids, but he couldn't find where it was coming from. He later found out that a former airport employee who loved orchids had died in the typhoon. The employee's spirit was said to be haunting the airport. His experiences didn't stop there. One evening, he rode a jeepney to the airport. He met 3 passengers, a man, a woman, and a child, who were all dressed like local fishermen. They told the driver to stop, but when the driver looked back, they were gone. The man was shocked and asked the driver what happened. The driver said he was alone in the jeepney the whole time, and that the other passengers might have been spirits of the people who died in the typhoon. From that day on, the air traffic controller made it a point to pray for the souls of those who lost their lives in the typhoon, hoping to bring them peace and closure. This story happened years ago at St. Raymond's building in the University of Santo Tomas. It's said that years ago, a girl took her own life in one of the restrooms on the first floor because she was bullied about how she looked. One day, a student went to the same restroom to fix her makeup. She saw another girl doing the same thing, but when she tried to talk to her, the girl didn't answer. The girl just went into one of the cubicles without saying a word. The student waited for a while, but the girl didn't come out. She started to wonder what was going on, so she looked under the cubicle door. But what she saw really shocked her. There were no feet, and when she turned around, the girl was standing right in front of her, asking, "Am I beautiful now?" This story happened to a woman who worked at the Manila Hotel way back in 2007. She was new to the job and was assigned to work on the 7th floor, which was said to be haunted by a ghost lady. Many of her coworkers had shared scary stories about the floor, but she didn't believe them. She thought that they were just trying to scare her. One day, while she was using the comfort room, she heard a strange noise, the sound of a toilet flushing from the next cubicle. But what really scared her was that she was alone in the comfort room. She had entered the room just a minute ago, and she was sure no one had followed her in. She checked the other cubicles, but there was no one there. The water in the toilet bowl was draining, as if someone had just flushed it. She was so scared that she ran out of the comfort room and didn't stop until she was back at her desk. She eventually quit her job because of the many scary experiences she had on the 7th floor. She never forgot the sound of that toilet flushing, and the trauma still haunts her up to this day. This story happened years ago, before the controversial Rojas bombing occurred. It was a typical evening for a young woman who often visited the Rojas market in Davao, until she met an old woman wearing all black who asked for food and said something strange. The old woman told her to go home because something bad was going to happen. She also mentioned a strong earthquake, but the young woman didn't take her seriously. The young woman and her friend didn't leave the market right away. They walked around some more, but she couldn't ignore the feeling that something was off. She kept thinking about the old woman's words. Then suddenly, they heard a loud explosion. It was the Rojas bombing, a tragic event that shook the city. The market erupted into chaos, with people running and screaming everywhere. The young woman and her friend were lucky to have escaped safely. Looking back, the young woman realized that the old woman's warning had saved her life. She felt grateful, but also curious. Who was that old woman, and how did she know about the bombing? The young woman never saw her again, but she never forgot the mysterious warning that changed her life forever. This story happened around the 2000s to a young boy who was on a family trip to Montalban, Rizal. It was a rainy day, and the news were filled with reports of the Payatas landslide tragedy. As they were driving through Payatas, he saw something that would stay with him forever. On the side of the road, he saw a woman and their young son walking together. What caught his attention was that they were both covered in dark mud, and they looked very sad and scared. The boy was confused, and they asked his family if they saw the woman and child too, but they just shook their heads, except for his older sister, who looked pale and frightened. She later told him that she saw them too, but she didn't want to say anything in order to avoid scaring everyone else in the car. The boy knew something wasn't right. He kept thinking about the woman and child, and why they were walking alone on a rainy day. It wasn't until later that he found out the truth. The Payatas landslide had happened just a day or two before, and many people had lost their lives. The boy then realized that the woman and child he saw might have been among the victims, so he and his family prayed for the people who died from the tragedy. This story happened years ago to a 20-year-old man who worked at the Don Gallo mansion in Parañaque, Philippines. The mansion had a dark history, having been the site of a massacre many years ago where the victims were brutally killed and burned. One night, the man was sleeping in the barracks when he was suddenly awakened by a loud scream. At first, he thought it was just someone arguing, but when he heard the scream again, he got up to see what was happening. That's when he saw something that shocked him, a figure of someone on fire running outside the barracks. He quickly woke up his father, who was also working at the site, to help put out the fire, but when they got outside, the figure suddenly disappeared. The man's father seemed to know something, but he told his son to just go back inside and pray. The man was confused, but he did as he was told. The next day, he found out that he was not the only one who had experienced strange occurrences at the mansion. Many others had also seen ghostly apparitions and experienced terrifying events. It seemed that the mansion was indeed haunted by restless spirits. From then on, the man made it a habit to pray before sleeping, hoping to avoid any more encounters with the paranormal. This story happened years ago to a group of students who were practicing for a show at the FEU auditorium. They were all excited to perform, but little did they know that the auditorium had a dark history. As they were setting up, one of them heard a strange singing voice. It was a loud and scary song, and it made them feel nervous. They tried to ignore it, but they were all on edge. Then, one of their friends looked through the curtain and saw something that made them very afraid. A woman in the red dress was standing in the middle of the stage, staring straight at them. The group was very scared. They quickly opened the curtain, and what they saw was even more frightening. The auditorium was filled with people, but they were all dressed in old clothes. The woman in red was still standing there, her face pale and bloody. The group knew they had to get out of there fast. They packed up their things and ran out of the auditorium, not stopping until they were safely outside. From that day on, they made sure to always pray before performing, hoping to avoid any scarier encounters. This story happened years ago to a man at De La Salle University. It was around 6 p.m. He would run around the oval and enjoy the fresh air. When he was leaving the campus, he saw a friend of his walking in. What caught his attention was that his friend was wearing a school uniform, which seemed strange since it was already late in the day. The man decided to follow his friend. As he walked, he noticed that there were kids who were still playing and riding skateboards. Suddenly, his friend turned around and looked at him. Then, in a flash, he disappeared into a tree. He looked around and saw that the kids who were skateboarding had also vanished. It was as if he was alone the whole time. When he got home, he called his friend to ask where he was. His friend said he was at home, which confused the man even more. He asked his friend what he was wearing, and when the friend described his clothes, the man realized that it was the same thing he had seen him wearing earlier. He told his friend what had happened, and his friend was just as confused and scared as he was. From that day on, the man never went back to that place alone ever again. This story happened years ago to a man who was riding a jeepney home from his night shift job in Cavite, Philippines. It was a quiet ride with only a few passengers on board, but the man noticed a woman sitting next to the driver. She was wearing a blue uniform, but her face looked strange. It was orange, like she had been burned. The woman kept staring at him, and he started to feel uneasy. It wasn't until they reached their destination and the man got off the jeepney that he realized something was seriously wrong. The other passenger, a man who had been sitting quietly in the back, approached him and and said, "Be careful." The woman who was sitting next to the driver was a ghost. The man was shocked and asked what he meant. The passenger explained that the woman had appeared out of nowhere and he was too scared to get close. As the man walked away, he couldn't help but think about the strange encounter. He had heard rumors about a company in the area that had caught fire, killing many people. He wondered if there was any connection between the ghostly woman and the fire. From that day on, he was more careful when riding the jeepney at night, and he always made sure to pray for protection before he got on. This story happened years ago one night at Ateneo de Davao University. It was already 10 p.m. when a student and his friends walked out of the building. They were greeted by the dark and quiet campus. The student was walking with his friends, holding hands to avoid tripping in the dark. They were almost at the stairs when the student looked up and saw something that made him stop. There were three dark figures standing by the rails of the adjacent building. They were tall, and what was really strange was that they didn't have any faces. The student pointed at them and said, "Look, our school is being robbed." But as they looked closer, they realized that something was off. The student and his friends quickly ran downstairs, not saying a word. They were scared and didn't know what to do. When they finally reached the ground floor, they were relieved to see the guards and the lit up buildings. But the student couldn't ignore the feeling that they had just seen something supernatural. He asked his friends what they thought those figures were, but they just shook their heads and said, "You already know what they are. Don't ask me anymore." The student was left wondering what they had really seen that night. This story happened years ago to a young boy who lived in an old ancestral house in Malolos, Bulacan. The house was one of the oldest in the city and was even a part of the country's history, being the seat of the first Congress of the Philippine Revolutionary Government. One summer day, the boy woke up late and went downstairs to eat breakfast. As he was eating, he felt someone walk behind him. He thought it was his aunt, so he asked her to pass the vinegar, but there was no answer. The boy turned around, but his aunt wasn't there. He was scared and didn't know what to do, so he ran upstairs to the balcony and then downstairs to the garden, shouting, "There's a ghost! There's a ghost!" His family was surprised to see him so scared, but when they asked him what happened, he told them about the incident. It turned out that the ghost was believed to be that of an old woman who had lived with the boy's family a long time ago. She had taken care of the boy's father and his siblings when they were young, and she had died in the house due to her old age. The boy's family had always known that the house was haunted, but they had never seen the ghost before. The boy's encounter with the ghost was the first time anyone had seen her in a long time.